Okay.
Okay. So, welcome everybody. I am so glad that you are here with us today. And today we have author Morgan Gauthier. Is that how you say your last name?
It's Gauthier.
Oh,
Oh, wow. Completely flubbed that one.
Yeah, my husband he's from Louisiana, so it's Cajun French. So we have to be special in our pronunciation.
Got it.
okay. Morgan Gauthier. Okay. So, wow. Did not prepare myself for that one. So, take
That's
notes.
okay.
Take two.
notes. If you're ever doing this, make sure you get name pronunciations beforehand. I know this, but I don't keep up with it.
That's okay. I answer to Gauthier these days too. It's fine.
Oh my goodness. So, yeah, and I am Catherine Fogelman White, and with me is my co-host and author buddy FP Spirit. So today we're with Morgan Gauthier.
Wink, wink.
And yeah, I'm like, did I say that right again? And we're just going to be talking with her about her writing journey and her books, which are awesome. And of course, check out the description below for her links and follow her in all the places. I especially like following her on Instagram. That is how I came across her. And I love the Wolves of Adalore, and I'm very excited about your newest book and your upcoming book. So, yeah, Morgan was born to two book-loving parents and raised on a healthy diet of Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Nancy Drew, and any fantasy book she could get her hands on. And she started writing her own stories at 11 years old and hasn't looked back. So, tell us a little bit about you and like just your life that led you to writing and all of that good stuff. Let's start there. Tell the audience some about you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you both for having me. I'm really excited to be on. And basically what you said, I started writing when I was 11. I still to this day write all my books in notebooks by hand before I transfer them to computers.
Wow.
Mhm.
I can't, I'm not very creative and inspired in front of the computer, and I get very easily distracted. So, notebooks, notebooks
Know
is,
that feeling.
yes, notebooks is the way to go for me. Um, I I read everything I could growing up, whether it was fantasy. I love Nancy Drew books, like murder mysteries.
Yeah, I noticed that. Love that. I'm a
Yeah.
Hardy Boys fan myself.
Oh yeah, I've got a whole bunch of those too.
Hmm.
Um, and then now in my adult years, I like Agatha Christie during spooky season.
Hmm.
So I still read those whodunits. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a genre I wish I could write, but my brain does not work that way. So I'll just read it instead.
Yeah. Yep, me too. I'm like, nah, I'm too dumb for that. So
I
I
just
will.
I always get the person wrong. I'm like so confident by the end of the book. I'm like, I know it. I've got it this time, and I'm so left field on it that I'm just like, this is why I don't write it. This is why right here.
That's great.
um, but yeah, so I write fantasy, fantasy romance. I do have a couple contemporary romance books out there. Um, but I really like to have just a little bit of romance in my books. It doesn't have to necessarily be the main plot line, but I have to have like just a little bit of boyfriend vibes in there. Um, so I do have the completed trilogy, The Wolves of Adalore, The Red Maiden, The Raven and the Wolf. That is upper YA, epic fantasy, romances, subplots, but it does follow a lot of point of views. I say it's kind of like a funnel. because in the book one, we have a lot of point of views. And as the series continues, it dwindles down to just the main few characters. So it is likened to a Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and Throne of Glass. So if you like a lot of characters and a lot of storylines that have to, that are interwoven and characters that all kind of meet by book 3, that would be the series for you. Now, this new book I have out came out August 2nd. It is A Song of Shadow and Starlight. It is the first in a 4-book series. It is new adult fantasy romance. So the romance is heavier and it is more of a plot line than in the trilogy. But book 2 is coming out April of 2024, and the cover reveal and pre-order links and all that go up September 19th. So we're getting started.
That's great.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, a question for you, because in my series, I have a tendency to write from multiple point of views. So when you're doing that, how do you keep the characters straight? Is there any method to it for you, or what do you do?
Lots of notes.
Okay.
And I have Pinterest boards.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Pinterest fiend because I'm a visual person. So every character, every place that's in my head, I have Pinterest boards for every single one of those categories, so that I'm taking like little bits and pieces from different pictures that match what's in my head, and then I can describe it. I do a whole lot of research as well through like library or Google or whatever to help me form my worlds. But then as far as the characters go, like obviously I've got like the visual Pinterest boards, and in my notebook, since I write everything down, I go through and I really make sure it's not like a huge like character study, so to speak, but I do have like their main character qualities, their flaws, their likes, their dislikes, their physical features. So I've really kind of got this solid picture in my head of what they look like, not just main characters, but all the way down to like support characters, minor characters, just so I know before I start writing their scenes how they would react to something or how they would say something, if they have a lisp, if they have a limp, different things like that. So
very cool.
It definitely helps me keep them straight that way.
Definitely include your Pinterest links and so we can add them in here. I'm sure people would be interested in that. I'm interested in that.
Yeah, so I do eventually make them public. When I'm first starting a project, they are private and they're secret boards, so I don't spoil anything for anyone. But like the trilogy, that's all public now, so people can go through and look through those. Song of Shadow and Starlight, those are still secret. So
that's great.
I love that about Pinterest, being able to make those secret boards, and especially where your books and your characters are related. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to make them, and hence why I don't always sit down and try to create on the computer, because Pinterest, I'll be on Pinterest for like 3 hours instead of writing. So
right. Yep. I had to delete it off of my phone because of that. It's like I just go straight there.
It's addicting. And then you're doing characters and worlds, and then all of a sudden you're on like crockpot recipes. I'm like, what happened? What happened? Where did it there?
Yeah,
the characters were cooking.
Exactly. And then my brain tends to think, oh wow, we did so much writing, and it's like, no, we did head plotting. That's it.
Yes, it's all up here.
Absolutely. So what inspired you to write these first series? What was the inspiration for it?
So Wolves, I actually started writing when I was 14. And I didn't publish it till I was 29. Wow. So it was like a 15-year on and off labor of love. And I knew that one was going to be really tough because it has so many characters and points of view in it, and all these different, interwoven plot lines and this threading of a story, because it doesn't make sense without all of it. I know some people, they don't like all the points of view. They like it from maybe 1 or 2 characters, but with this kind of work, it doesn't make sense. That's why it's likened to Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, because there's different journeys and characters that you're following. But I really, when I was reading fantasies as a younger girl, I was not finding a lot of characters I could relate to.
Mhm.
I loved fantasy, but I didn't see anyone who necessarily looked like me. I'm I'm half Puerto Rican, half Caucasian, so
Mhm.
I have some of the darker features, and I didn't see a lot of women being described like me. And
Mhm.
I noticed that when I was like 10 or 11, I was just like, I want somebody who looks like me and not somebody who's just a damsel in distress. I want somebody who can hold their own and can save the day and can swing a sword and all those good things.
Mhm.
So I started writing Wolves of Adalore with Salome in mind, and she's on the green cover.
Mhm.
Um, and she's just this girl who learns to fight and she has to overcome a lot of adversity. She has her brother with her, and
Mhm.
they have to go take back their kingdom from their older sister who took over.
Ah.
And the other part of this is I wanted to have a female villain because I didn't want the quintessential like haha male mean
Right.
character. You know what I'm saying? Like he's just mean to be mean. So I really dove deep into why she's the villain. And I
Mhm.
hope that by the end of the trilogy, people stop and think like, I don't know if she's really the villain.
Yeah.
And you just see the human behind it. And now there are bad people. I'm not trying to say like there are no bad people. But for her, like you actually get to see the villain's point of view, what made her the villain. So I wanted two really strong female protagonists and antagonists who were these mirrors of each other. So everything
Interesting.
Salome does is good, but the same things Niabi has done and they're bad. And why is that? So
Mhm.
I love that. I
Yeah.
stinking love that. There are so many, and definitely whenever I was growing up, villains so often were just bad because they needed to be the villain.
yeah.
And they were notoriously dudes or something. And it's like, you know, there's some times where I am the villain of my own story and I am out there trying to take over the world and I kick butt when I'm doing it. So it's not right, but come on, it's not just only a guys only field. So I stinking love that, being able to see a very deep female villain of
Mm-hmm.
sorts where she's got a backstory and I especially love the stories like Wolves of Adalore and your trilogy where the villain and the hero both come from all pretty much the same background and they're just making completely opposite choices from each other
Yeah.
and and seeing the consequences of that. And so I love it when kids can see that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really fun. I know my villain is one of the highlights of writing
Mhm.
trilogy. She was just very interesting to get into her head and realize that villains don't see themselves as the villain.
Yep.
At
Yeah.
least in my trilogy, she didn't see herself as a bad guy.
Mhm.
She saw everybody else as they've brought this out of me and this is how I protected myself.
Ah,
Hmm.
interesting. That's a
Yeah.
great way to write it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So it
it's
was
I,
fun.
3D characters at their best. That's awesome. So,
Thanks.
what was the inspiration for your protagonist and your antagonist? Were they? Do you see parts of yourselves in them at all, or what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely put pieces of myself in both of them. Um, I also, because I was writing it on and off for 15 years, right, I also grew and I matured from a 14-year-old who had this concept to, the near 30-year-old who published it finally, right? So I became, a wife and a mom and um it like because I have two girls and a boy,
Mhm.
6, 4, and 3.
Mhm.
So my daughters, as I was writing this, I was like, I really want to have. Uh, go talk to Daddy, honey. I don't know if y'all can hear her. Okay, go see Daddy. Um, I have no idea what I was talking about. That's like the mama. Oh, my daughters.
You do, exactly.
It was
On
like
cue.
I I wanted them to see a strong like female
Mhm,
lead,
mhm,
and not just a strong female lead who was like, my husband calls them the Molly Sue character, that
mhm.
they just they it's like they get everything quick and they always make the right decisions and they're perfect and always on it. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wrote characters who are flawed, who make bad decisions and have to pay the consequences for their actions,
Yeah.
who they have a choice of making the right decision and the wrong decision, and you see them sometimes make those wrong decisions. So I just wanted it to be realistic. And I know that
Yeah.
with YA fantasy, sometimes we like to brush over some life issues, but because mine is upper YA, I deal with some of those heavier topics,
Mhm.
as far as um, actions, consequences, and you're in control basically of your destiny. Nobody has done this to you. They might have
Mhm.
done things that have made you react a certain way, right? We're always in control of our own selves. So you can
That's a
become the
great
villain
message.
or you can be the hero, and that's really up to you. So
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something in real life people tend to forget a lot, and definitely teenagers, because they're just starting to learn it, is that even if you have a messy background and a messy backstory and people really hurt you and messed you up, unfortunately, even though it's not fair, it is now your responsibility to start healing. Nobody else can heal you but you. And you have to start being proactive in that and taking the steps and finding that path of healing, or you're going to just become the next person in the cycle that hurts somebody else.
yeah.
No, that's great. Which I really love. Do you get a chance to read any of this to your daughters? Have they are they into your books at all?
Not yet. They're little bitty. Um,
Okay. Okay.
my oldest daughter is 6, then my son
Okay.
is 4, my youngest daughter is 3.
Okay.
Um, so they're definitely small, but they do understand that mommy writes books, and
Mhm.
they definitely want to read them at some point.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, they're just still a little young.
Yeah,
Okay.
and a little young to start grasping all of those concepts,
Mhm.
Yeah,
big kid concepts, for
yeah.
sure.
I'm excited for them to read it one day,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. My first series, actually, both series are kind of written for kind of an homage to a role playing game that my sons and I have played together. And so every time I publish another book, I make sure they have a copy, which they refuse to read because they say, "Oh, we already lived it, Dad."
they'll read it
But
one day. They will.
one day maybe. But anyway, no. So I did, like I said, I did start reading A Song of Shadow and Starlight, and I love where you're going with it. I did peek at some of the reviews of it to get an idea of where it was going, and very very interesting. Where did that concept come from?
I was writing the second book actually of the Wolves trilogy. And sometimes when you're writing a project, you get like these shiny new ideas that you want to like go
Mhm.
start writing.
Yeah.
So I always, if I'm inspired by a new idea, I always get a new notebook. So they're all in different things. And I'll write the concepts down, or I'll write about the characters, whatever that's inspiring me at the time, just so I don't forget.
Mhm.
Um, and I had this idea of 3 magic wielding brothers. And how cool would it be if they were in a world that has elemental magic? So, earth, wind, water, whatever.
Mhm.
And to play with the concept of their anomalies. So
Mhm.
they have rare magic. So the other concept is, what if I introduced a rival kingdom? And what if that rival kingdom had a princess who they kidnapped? And then it just kind of spiraled from there. So it turned into this Avatar: The Last Airbender meets Tangled meets Dungeons and Dragons. It has trolls and elves. Like I know Fae, they're very popular. I want a good elf story with some trolls and the dwarves. Because like I said, I love Lord of the Rings. So I'm like, let me put those races in a book. And I really wanted that classic fantasy feel that I grew up on of like lava. I thought lava was going to be a huge problem growing up. And my son is obsessed with volcanoes and lava right now. So
Yes.
That's great.
I saw him playing, like he took all the couch cushions off, put him in the living room, and was going hop, hop, hop. And he was like, the floor is lava. And I was like, oh my God, what if they had to go through this jungle and there was this lava? So like, little ideas like that. And I was like, it was very, it was like nostalgic for me because it was going through jungles and dealing with lava and sinking ships and all those things I loved reading when I was growing up, and just the escapism of it all. So so just basically those concepts of what if I did this and what if I did that, and it just kind of spiraled into A Song of Shadow and Starlight. So
and I think books like that are becoming very popular, increasingly more popular. I feel like we kind of went away from that for a while, where authors and the publishing industry were really pushing grittier books, more realism, and I don't know, it just more structure. But then it's like we've lost out on all the fun. And not to say that new popular books the last decade haven't been fun, but so often whenever I'm picking up a book, I'll put it down. I'm like, well, I enjoyed that, but it misses that like nostalgia of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and Treasure Island and just all of those fun. It's an adventure. And it fantasy might not need a point to just read and have fun.
Absolutely. So your next book, you're still working on it. How far are you in it?
I'm about a third of the way finished writing it. I know everything that needs to happen. The way my brain works, it's like it plays like a movie in my head. So I don't have to write in chronological order. I had a conversation today actually with my brother-in-law. He's like, so how is it going? How far of the book do you have done? And I was like, well, I've got pieces, because it's like a puzzle to me. I know what's supposed to happen and I can write when I'm inspired to write certain scenes and certain chapters or certain pieces of dialogue, and then I just put them in place when it's time. And he was just like, that's insane. My brain can't like wrap around that concept, and I can't write in chronological order. It does not work for me. I feel very trapped and feel like I have to write something that I'm not necessarily feeling at the moment. So I mean, I just like I said, it's a movie in my head, so I definitely know what's happening when it's supposed to happen. So right now I have about a third of the book done, and I need to get back to getting it all out of my head, because it's done up here. It's done. It's just putting it down on paper that's taking me a little bit longer.
And maybe a little bit of it is on Pinterest, right?
Yes, it's all there on Pinterest. It's and whenever I need inspiration, I go and look through it, and normally a scene will hit me, and I just like, oh, I feel like writing this chapter now, and I go and get that done. So
that's great.
Yeah, it is hard for the pantsers to like run with that outline and that structure, and it's just way more fun to build the puzzle pieces. Like you said, these are my inspiring points, and then for me, I'll find that I get inspired after I put all of those down and I get them down on paper. Then I start having fun connecting the dots between them. And okay, so this scene and this scene are not in the same chapter, but now how do I connect them and make it flow to one another? And so it's a lot of fun. It's like playing The Floor is Lava, except in your head.
Yeah.
So do you ever act out any of your scenes? Just curious.
Oh, absolutely. I have
Okay.
to make sure it's physically possible.
Okay. So it's not just
Like,
me.
no, no, I know I've got to. And if I'm not like physically up, like in my head, I can, like I said, I'm visual, so I can see myself or my character doing certain movements.
Mhm,
But yeah, oh no, especially for the Wolves trilogy,
mhm.
my husband definitely thought I was a little insane at some points because my music tastes changed book to book. I would be crying at the computer some days and laughing other days.
Oh,
I mean, I
yes.
probably look like a straight up psycho, but he's now used to it, so he doesn't question it anymore.
Just skulks off and goes, okay, she's having one of those days.
Yeah, he'll be like, "Are you okay?" I'll be like, "Yeah, it's just this chapter." He's like, "Oh, okay, okay, it's fine. It's not like anything serious. It's fine. Not like serious life issues. It's just you know, off to character. It's fine." So,
Right,
There
right.
you go.
It's nothing I need to fix, so we're
yeah,
cool.
Right.
yeah. It's a me problem, not an us problem. So,
There. It's important. I remember when I started writing, one of the things I had done, I used to fence when I was younger, and I have like a practice sword or a couple of things around the house, and I'm trying to figure out some battle scenes. So I'm sitting here and I'm making all these like movements and parries and thrusts and stuff like that with this sword. And my wife's looking at me like, "What are you doing? What is going on in here?" So it's just, little on the crazy side, but you're right. If you don't sometimes physically act it out, you don't know, well, does that work? No, there's no way you could do that. How can you possibly parry that maneuver? How could you even see that coming?
yeah.
So there's
Oh,
just
yeah.
that kind of crazy. So
Yeah. Well, I know for my third book, I don't know if y'all do this, but I do it when I'm researching like medieval type battles. I spent like 3 days watching documentary after documentary about medieval warfare and like
mhm,
weaponry and
yeah.
how they did war, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my husband would come in and I'm just sitting there with my headphones watching some like big old battle scene reenactment. He's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "It's this like 1500s like warfare,
Yeah.
medieval, whatever." And he's like, "Interesting. Okay, like she's doing something new. Like it's something else. Let it go." But
Yes,
yeah,
our
I mean, I just
spouses.
you want it
Yeah.
to be as accurate as possible, but stay in that fantasy realm. So knowing
Mhm.
that you have these epic battles coming, you want to make sure that people aren't going to pick it apart of like, that's not how they did stuff back then, or that's not physically possible with this. Like these swords weren't, like you get those people. So
Yeah.
you're trying to make sure that you're staying true to your world, but then also true to what's possible in that kind of time frame, if you will. So
Right,
That
right.
yeah,
makes sense.
And if it's
Makes sense.
impossible, then you always just throw a dragon at it and it works
yeah.
out fine.
And then fire, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and speaking of like those people, those nitpickers that always come, do you hear from readers very often from your books? And do they reach out to you? And
Yeah, I definitely get comments or DMs. I do, me personally, I do try to respond to everyone who reaches out to me.
Mhm.
Um, I might not for a few days because mom life, but I do try to I do try to get back to everyone to at least thank them for reading the book or answer whatever questions they might have.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, but I know people ask me all the times about reviews and like, do I go look at them? I do when a book first launches for like a couple weeks, or like early reviews,
Mhm.
just to see what people are thinking, what they're saying. If they all have like an issue, is it the same issue across like 20 or 30 reviews that maybe I've done something that I could fix in
Mhm.
my next work? Um, but typically I've not had the issues of like a major flaw across the board. So I guess that's a good thing. But I do
Mhm.
stop reading them because I used to obsess over them,
Been
and
there.
it stole all my joy of writing, my creativity. And I went from trying to write stories I wanted to tell to how can I impress them? How can how do I get that 5-star of someone who only gives out 3 stars? Like that was very unhealthy. So like I said, I do read them to start just to make sure my book is landing right. And then I quit.
Yeah.
Just for my own mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the most interesting questions you've gotten from readers?
Oh, I don't necessarily get a lot of, weird questions or anything like that. They typically are talking to me about when's the next book coming out, or like book boyfriends, or this is my favorite guy, because obviously in A Song of Shadow and Starlight we have 3 magic wielding brothers who are all very good looking in their own way. And so I have people messaging me about like, are we gonna get Atlas's point of view? Because I went completely opposite of the trilogy is multiple points of view to A Song of Shadow and Starlight. That's one point of view. So I wanted to challenge myself to write the book in just one. And it's important to do that one in just the one perspective, because with Shay, she's learning that the people that she thought loved her and thought that, oh, of course the dog's knocking my stuff.
Oh no.
It's okay.
I'm telling you, mom life, man.
Yep.
It happens. That's fine.
Yeah.
No problem.
But for Shay, she's learning that the people she thought loved her, who raised her, that she could trust, might not be trustworthy. And then her enemies might actually be the only people she can trust. So you're going through this journey with her of figuring out what's really happening behind the scenes, and my whole life has been a lie. What am I supposed to do now? But with the second book, people do want the main male love interest's point of view. And I was super excited to see that in reviews, because I'd already intended to have his in the second book. We just had to get through the first one of, can we actually trust him? Do we like him? Is he good for her? And then once you realize like, we like him, we trust him, then we get to see, the behind the scenes of him as well.
That's
Cool.
awesome.
Yep.
That is awesome. All right. We've only got about 8 minutes left or so. Frank, do you have any more questions you would like to ask?
Yeah. Is there any kind of teasers or anything you'd like to give for your upcoming book at all, or you still want to keep that all secret?
Well, book 2, I know that I have advertised in the past for A Song of Shadow and Starlight that it is a Dungeons and Dragons situation. And obviously people realize it because of the world building, and like there's trolls and elves and dwarves, but it says Dungeons and Dragons. So book 2 is where the dragons come into play. And with the marketing for that one, we've gone from Dungeons and Dragons to How I Met, not How I Met, How to Train Your Dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah,
Great.
so
That's awesome.
we're going Avatar: Last Airbender meets How to Train Your Dragon in book 2. So
That's
I'm
fantastic.
really excited. It's my first book with dragons. There's a whole lot more romance. It is a slow burn romance, so people don't get together in book 1. I know some people are like, but they're not together. I'm like, yeah, but it's slow burn. Like they're not meant to be together in book 1. But in book 2, we definitely get a lot more, as people say, a lot more kissy content. So yeah, we're gonna give people what they want in book 2, I guess.
Okay.
Sweet.
Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah.
So tell us where our audience can find you and follow you at. We know Pinterest, and I mentioned Instagram.
Yeah, so I am most active on Instagram because I prefer it. I am on TikTok. I'm also on Threads, Facebook. It's all at Author Morgan Gauthier. They all have the same one, so it's very convenient. But like I said, if you actually want to get information at a good clip, it's Instagram for me. No.
Perfect. And do you have a newsletter that people could sign up for and like get good book deals or details about and updates about your books?
Yeah, I do have a newsletter. I try to send it out once a month. linked in my bio on Instagram. There is the form you can fill out in my link tree. I don't know when this is going to like air or whatever, but on Tuesday, September 12th, we or me have announcements about future career things and where to land. So my books where you can purchase like signed copies and merch and other good things, that's going to be announced on Tuesday the 12th.
Very
All
cool.
right.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
it's on Instagram because I don't really, I can't keep up with all the socials. I just can't do it.
That's okay.
I understand. I totally understand. There's too
Absolutely.
many of them.
They are. They coming out with new ones like once a month, and I'm like, ugh. I just go get my handle because I'm like, if this does blow up, then I've got my name. Other than that, I'm not really on it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Very smart thing to do. Go grab your handle. I did not do that and I regret it. So
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been doing it now, just in case, because you never know which platforms take off. So
yeah.
That's
Yep.
true. That's true.
All right. So yeah, definitely to our audience, be sure that you go down to the description in this video and follow Morgan, definitely on Instagram, and sign up for her newsletter if you want to really get in on some good deals and just support her there. That supports authors so much. And definitely once you get on Instagram and go like a bunch of her stuff and share it to your stories if you can, because that helps so much with the algorithm and everything.
Mhm.
So yeah, and with that, anything you guys want to add before we sign off?
no, again, thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed talking books with you. I always enjoy being able to talk with fellow authors, especially about characters and worlds and all of that. So, and
Yeah.
it's a nice little break where I am not solely responsible for watching the babies.
Yes, exactly.
Sounds good.
Exactly.
All right.